evening, friends and family, and thank you for coming to another night with Behind Black Business, sponsored by Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities, where we feature a Black business in our community every week. And tonight, I have the honor of being in this wonderful studio with this wonderful person, as drummer, Baba Tyehimba Mtu. Tyehimba Mtu. And he is someone that has been in our community for many, many years, a very important person and someone that I think you need to know. So I want to thank you for inviting me, and I want to thank you for taking the time to share with our community, you know, who you are. Thank you. So as you know, we're a nonprofit organization, and we're working to help circulate dollars in our community. And we feel that in order to do that, we have to support one another. We have talked about our businesses and you supporting our businesses and us having more Black businesses in our community. And in order for our community to thrive, we have to work collectively, whether we're supporting our businesses or whether we're supporting causes or just engaging with each other culturally. And so it's very important. And that's why we have this podcast every night. And as you know, we are also great proponents of bookstores. We do have a resurgence of Black bookstores in our community. We know of the Underground that is in this community, Underground Bookstore with Brother Yoel on 87th Street. But we also have the Book Joint on 51st Street. We have Semicolon over in Wicker Park, Soulful Chicago, which is over in Pilsen. And then we have some online locations with Rose Cafe. Burst Into Books is in Roseland. And we have a lot of authors and people out here writing books. As a matter of fact, our guest tonight is not only a drummer, as you can see. We're sitting here in the studio with all of these beautiful drums, but he's also an author. And as we talk to him, we'll find that he's providing a lot of different services to our community. So also there is the Southside Community Federal Credit Union, which is a Black-owned institution. And they've been giving loans and financial literacy classes to people in the community who otherwise would not be able to get loans at some of our larger banking institutions. So, and as we tell you every week, in order for them to thrive, they need us to open up an account. And when you create accounts at a bank, that's how they're able to create money, by doing business with you. So we ask you to please support our Black bookstores. So I am not going to say too much more about that. I would like to get into this interview because I did speak with Baba Tyehimba. I'm trying to get this name correct. Baba Tyehimba. I did speak with him at length. And I learned a lot about him. And so, as with many of our business people in our community, it's more than what you see. I've seen you out here for, I'm going to say, over 30 years. Because my daughter, okay, she's 32. And you were playing at the beginning of the African Festival of the Arts, when it first started. Right there in Harper Court, right? Yeah. Okay, can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that was the beginning where so many people were going to Windows to Africa to learn a lot about Africa And that was just kind of the beginning of so many festivals that started here in Chicago.
Okay. Hamjambo. Jimilango Baba Tyehimba Mtu mimi ni mwalimu Ngoma Karibu. So, just a welcome. That's all I was doing, so not to be strange. The African Festival of the Arts, actually it started about 30 years ago, maybe 31 years ago. The year prior to that, Patrick Wutor, who had the Window to Africa, had a gathering and a program in front of his store. I played for that also. But this was, again, I think it was in 1990, 1990, 91. A group of artists got together and decided that we needed to do an African festival. And we decided collectively to do the African Festival of the Arts. So it was about 20 or 25 different artists that got together to do this. Everybody from Baba Tunde to Marvin Sen to people that were doing, it was mostly people who created art. And then a lot of different artists, musicians and that stuff. So the brother that was the head of the committee at that time, or that was in charge of the whole thing, was a brother named Duke Jenkins. And he was an instructor at what was then Chicago Teachers College, later became known as Chicago State. And we did the first African festival there in Harper Square, and I've been involved with them ever since. So for the first 4 years, I was in charge of logistics, getting everything, setting up everything, as well as performing with all the different groups that were there. So I know the first year, I think I performed several years with sound therapy, with Light Henry Huff and Calfani Rivers and Dr. Gunn. So we did that, and I think we had I don't know if Darlene Blackburn performed at that particular event, but I mean, over the years, we've done stuff with her. So that's how the festival started. It wasn't until the second or third year that Brother Patrick actually was more in charge of the whole thing. It was a community effort to promote Black things, and it kind of evolved into something of more of a selling venture. So that's kind of like how it changed, but we've always tried to maintain a standard of culture in the festival itself. So I think by the 5th year, we started doing what was called a drum village. And of course, it wasn't my original idea. I think it was Olushakura who came up with the idea, because the year prior to that, I was doing part of the art exhibits with Patrick's wife, Dee Wutor. And so many drummers showed up to play with me that they then evolved to the whole thing of like, we ought to just have a drum village. And that's been happening ever since. So this has been going on for over 30 years.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was not my first involvement in cultural activities, obviously, because I had been drumming with a lot of different groups. But that's kind of how the festival got started.
Now, as you mentioned the drumming, you know, drumming is so important to our community, to our people. It's so important in Africa. You know, the drums send a message, and they have such a spiritual impact on people. And I know you as a drummer, but I know you also do other things as well, which we'll talk about a little bit. But in talking about you as a drummer, how long have you been on this path, on this journey?
Well, I've been a drummer all my life. I've been playing these kind of drums for at least 55, almost 60 years. So, I mean, this is how long I've been doing this. Some of these drums are 50 years old. I mean, this drum in particular, I think it's over 50 years old. And I've been doing it that long. And I've played with a lot of different groups over the period of that time. So watching people grow from us finding our Africanism and defining our culture in the way that we should be doing our culture. A lot of different groups evolved and grew and developed over the course of all those years. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, some of the people that were around in the beginning, like Sister Najwa, I remember when she started her group. Sure. Then Brother Alayo, we all went to school together. We went to Wilson City College, okay. Now Kennedy King College. Okay. And he started Mtu. So then also we had another brother, well, don't forget Mama Darlene, okay. Darlene Blackburn, because she's been around forever too. Sure. So I drummed with her for 25 years or more. So I mean, in terms of doing with different people. Mm-hmm. But I've drummed with so many different groups over the years and different groups of people, mm-hmm. and watched the different people evolve and change and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. So even like we had another brother, Ghanaian brother, Kofi Jantwa. He had started a group, and I drummed with him for a while. You know, I mean, I've drummed with so many different people. Yeah. Then I drummed with a Nigerian group, and I was their lead drummer. You know, I mean, for a while, but you know, a Yoruba guy. A lot of people over the years.
So I know when I was looking through one of your books, you know, which we'll talk about a little bit as well. My drums play for you, my people. And as you, and I would say as an artist, you talked about that evolving as a drummer, that you did not have a teacher.
Right.
Mention that. So can you expound on, I guess I would say, the impact of that in terms of your development?
Okay, well, impact is something that you would evaluate after it's happened. Mm-hmm. What was the impact of this? Okay. As it was happening, it wasn't a matter of an impact. There were no teachers. Mm-hmm. So even if I wanted a teacher, there was no one to teach you. One of the little experiences I did have was with the brother Babatunde Olatunji, mm-hmm. who was a drummer at that time from Nigeria. Now, he actually wasn't a drummer in his village. He developed that more after he came into this country. But as I later met him, I told him we had nobody to drum with, so I just played your record, and I played with it for years. Mm-hmm. So when I told him that, he gave me another record. Okay. Now, again, I said record, just to show you how dated this actually is. They still had vinyl records back then.
Okay, they're going back to those now.
Yes. Yeah. But in actuality, I never had a teacher. I've been teaching forever, but I've never had an actual teacher. And I've never studied under anybody. Mm-hmm. So this is the way I evolved with the whole thing.
Well, you did indicate that you felt that it had gave you an opportunity to be more original, and that you didn't have someone to tell you that you should do it this way or you shouldn't do it that way. You know, those tend to be types of kind of categories or boxes you in terms of your.
Well, in the earlier days, as people were trying to get into something cultural, mm-hmm. everybody was seeking what was called traditional African culture, which is kind of like a joke as you go back to look at it, because of course Africa is a continent. There's not one culture. Mm-hmm. Later, people started studying and emulating, acting like people in different parts of Africa, and they started trying to be like them. Mm-hmm. All of Africa belongs to me, so whatever I adopt, it's all right with me. But I didn't actually study at any particular discipline or from any particular group of people on the continent. Mm-hmm. I played with a group from a Ghanaian brother. His name was Echo Mensah. And that was an interesting story too, because Echo was a real drummer from Ghana. Quite often when you get here, people will come and they see the opportunity, they play a little bit, and you be thinking they're real drummers. Mm-hmm. Echo was an actual real drummer in Ghana. I remember an experience I had with him, for example, so many experiences over the years, playing a lot with the Ghanaian community This is a long time ago. But Echo was telling me how he actually played for Nkrumah when they would come to his village in Nkrumah's travels. Then another thing that was really interesting about Echo, a group came from Ghana, the National Ghanaian Dance Company, and Echo was up there talking to the drummers and the whatever. All the men, old men, were the lead drummers. They were the head drummers. He was up there talking. We looked up. Echo was playing the lead part at the performance.
Wow.
There wasn't even a question about, whatever. Because as I was explaining to you earlier, how when you do traditional material, traditional stuff, and it's not choreographed, it's usually choreographed by the drummer. So whatever he plays is what you do to the dance. So if he plays a particular part, you're turning to your left, then you're turning to your right, and you do it as long as he plays it. Okay. So it wasn't a matter of him having to know their choreography, but it was just interesting to me how we just like, you could do that? I mean, because it wasn't choreographed. I mean, it wasn't a choreographed kind of thing. But I'll mention Echo again. He was a true brother from the streets, though, in another way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, you describe playing the drums as a way of communicating.
Yes.
So what types of things are communicated? What types of messages are communicated through drumming? Okay, so most people don't understand this aspect of it because when they go to study African music, African dance, they merely mimic whatever they're teaching them. Okay. And they don't even understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and what it means. So in just the opposite way, all drumming is using language. And even when we talked about, or people mention quite often, they took the drums away from us. Part of the reason for taking the drums away, well, there were actually two basic reasons. It was not so much just communications, because we came from so many different parts of Africa. If you didn't speak that language, they didn't know what you were talking about. There's no language of the drum, it's the language of the people playing the drums. But the other thing that happens is what you call the spiritual energy. And this is the part that they took away from us because it had so much energy, spiritual energy. And this is why they wanted to not allow us to do that. And as you get back into this, you understand how to use the spiritual energy, whether it's communicating with the ancestors or they're communicating through you, or you're actually putting out energy in a particular way for a specific event or something that's going on. So playing for a wedding, a funeral, these are all different kinds of approaches that you do. And you're saying and doing different things, so it's so much involved in terms of doing that. When I became a master drummer, it was a matter of not being the best drummer in the world. Obviously I play well, but it wasn't a matter of being the best drummer. It had to do more with being a position in the community and being able to actually manipulate the spiritual energy. And I've played for just about every religious denomination that I can imagine, that you can imagine. I've participated in different things. And as a master drummer and a priest, I've actually performed weddings, funerals, naming ceremonies. I mean, I can do all of that when I'm not just drumming at it. But there's a process that you do for the particular events anyway. So how did you develop, like you started, I'm sure that was the first time, playing at a funeral, or first time of playing at a wedding. And, how did you develop your inspiration to know what to play or how to play?
Well, I remember some of the first, I wouldn't say the first, but some of the earlier weddings that I played for. I was playing with the brother that I just mentioned, Echo. Echo would not teach us anything. he did not teach us any Ghanaian rhythms. He would give us parts to play something. So he didn't really teach us anything, but he was always appropriate to the time and what was going on. So I mean, this is what was more important than actually knowing the right thing to play. It's the energy that you're actually addressing at the time. So a funeral, for example, if I were going to describe that, playing for a funeral, several things go on. First, you're calling the ancestors of the person who has passed and of the families that's there. So I'm calling them to be with us. Then, after they have arrived, something like this possession thing goes on a little bit sometimes. I used to not be able to control it, but now I can. But you're then telling the story about the person who passed. I mean, you're doing that in the drumming. So I'm literally talking with the drums, telling that story for the family, you know. Then the next thing you do in this whole evolution of this funeral, or the ritual itself, you're asking for other ancestors that are in a spiritual realm to welcome him or her, and to guide them a little bit, that they can feel comfortable in their new existence. You know, so it's a process that you actually go with each part of it. That's a funeral. Weddings, different. Naming ceremony, they're all different. So it's actually following the intent more than the actual, this is exactly the way it's done in Ghana by the Ashanti people, da-da-da-da-da. I'm not Ashanti, so I do what I want.
So like when you're playing at a festival, you know, and the people are coming in, and people hear the drums, and you know they have a certain feeling. And what messages are you sending out? You know, in situations like that.
Okay, in a festival situation, the first thing is doing something like a libation, where you're actually doing a calling for the ancestors, calling for the ancestors. Then you do a welcome. I would do something welcome. Then the next thing would be something that's festive, because it's a festival. And then that can go wherever it wants to go. You know, whether the people want to really get into it or whether they're going to mildly get into it. And there again gets into the understanding how to, big word, it sounds kind of bad, manipulate people that are there. So when I play, I can make you want to dance. I can make you want to play the drums and you start tapping on something. I can make you start patting your foot on the time. I know exactly what to play to motivate you. So these are the things that actually happen and what goes on in it. Again, that the concept of possession and the concept of people getting possessed and things of that, that's in one of my earlier books. I think I did a whole chapter on that. But that's a whole another kind of thing. But in a festival, it should be festive. I mean, that's the biggest part of it.
Now playing drums can be healing as well.
It is healing. Yeah. So I mean, that's part of what goes on too, depending on what the situation. So as a shaman, that's what I actually do. I heal, and my main instrument is the music, the energy that it's connected with the music itself. Yeah.
Now, I understand that you're a master drummer.
Yeah.
And you are also a master carver.
Yeah.
So would you like to expound on that, please?
Okay. So
what that means, a master drummer.
Master drummer is a term that's really more used in West Africa. In other parts of Africa, they don't even use the term master. And as I mentioned before, in the hierarchy of the drums and people playing the drums, you have the master drummers who have the connection with the ancestors, with the spirits and the energy. Then there might be a lead drummer, then somebody else who's playing different parts that actually make everything happen in such a way. In most African music, they don't use the word accompaniment instruments. If you're participating, you're in it.
Okay.
You know, so it's not playing accompaniment instruments. But master means someone who deals with that higher level of energy, not just he's the best drummer in the world. You can master anything and be very good at it, but that's the difference between a master drummer and just having mastered the drums. So actually I've done both.
Okay. And then you also carve drums,
okay.
but you have many drums in this room.
Yeah, I got about 150 in this room. You can't see them all.
150 drums. Wow.
Yes. Kind of the same thing that happened related to the drumming. I didn't have anybody to teach me how to carve. So what I did was, me and another brother, a couple other brothers, wanted to carve drums. And there was a group back at that time called the Sun Drummer. And that was Atukwe and Harold Murray. And part of the things that he was telling them, if you're gonna be a drummer, you gotta carve your own drum. Of course, that was not really true to anywhere but him saying it here.
Okay.
So I started carving then, and my first drum is back in the corner there. You can't see it from here. But when I started carving, I didn't know how to do it. And I just persevered, as they said. Because believe it or not, I started big and I got smaller rather than getting bigger. Wow. But they got a little less heavy. Because when I started drumming, I was playing one drum. Then I went from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 7 to 9 or whatever. So I mean playing at one time. So believe it or not, this is actually the second drum that I carved.
Oh wow.
This is the third. You know, I didn't start like simple, except the key to the whole thing, they're heavy. And these are heavy. The other ones, I can carry 3 of them at a time.
And they're also beautiful and,
Thank you.
and different.
Yeah. But just another word on the carved drums that I've made. I have drums that look like drums from many, many different parts of Africa. But in actuality, I haven't copied anything. So I quite often I definitely use the wood that's available to me here. There are 3 or 4 or 5 different kinds of wood that I prefer to carve drums out of. You know, so I do that. But in terms of the different types of drums, I can carve 5 or 6 different types of drums and styles of drums. That don't mean type not being 5 just like it, bigger and smaller. I mean completely different types. You know, just like this drum, for example, this would be considered what they call a fantephone drum from the Ashanti in Ghana. I did not copy the fantephone drums and like measure it and see and da-da-da-da-da. This is a drum that you might find more in Nigeria. It looks more like a drum in Nigeria. So even like how you attach and put the skins on the drum, this is a lacing process. That's what they call it. So it's not rope, this is lacing. These are actually pegged or tacked down. And this is the only thing that holds the skin are these little bitty pegs all around the top. That's a pegging process. Now, later they have drums that you rope. They have drums that you use with pegs. So there's so many different types, you know, and then some drums are carved directly from the trees. Some are assembled and you actually create the drums. So that's something that's common in different parts of Africa also.
I would think with the originality of your creations, if someone were, let's say 1,000 years from now, looking at the artifacts and in different areas here in the United States and in Africa, and they were to see some of your work, you know, they would be able to discern, you know, that maybe this drum wasn't from Africa, it's very related to Africa that you see there, but then the Black people who were here in this country at this time, I think there would be some distinction.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And I remember even with this drum, it was really funny. how people were saying, oh, you got that from Africa. And I have to show them. I said, well, do they put black fist on their drums?
There you go.
So, I mean, again, it's stuff that was related to us.
Sure.
Even this is called rap. This is Malcolm. This is my father. But I mean, I have different, each of the drums have their own names and energies, and you know, they do what they do. These are my older ancestral drums.
Now you have referred to your drums as your family, and you have different families of drums here.
Yeah,
So-
they're all drums are in families.
Okay.
All drums, and that's not just African drums. That's all drums, wherever you find them, and they're grouped and they're really considered families.
Okay.
So even if you were going to deal with something like some of the Latin percussion, there's a family of drums in the Latin percussion family. So the big heavy one is called a tumba. The middle one is called a kunga. Then the high one is called a quinto. So I mean, they're all in families. The same with drums that you find in other parts of Africa. Same thing, they're families. So they have their own energy, but they fit in the family in the manner that they're supposed to fit.
Okay. Wow. And you know, you talk about your spiritual strength, your spiritual abilities that you're putting into the development of your work and your playing. And as I mentioned earlier, I know that you are a drummer, but you carry other titles as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you're a shaman, a teacher, a philosopher, an author,
And a few
a
other
griot,
But
you
you
know,
don't know
I mean. So as a, and say in your journey with these instruments as a shaman, can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because some people may not know what shamanism is or what that means.
Okay, well, first off, it's just a term. People have many different names for the term of the person that does that.
Okay.
In some parts of the world, oh, it's a medicine man. He's the juju man. He's the one who actually does healing of different sorts. But basically, shamans do healing of all different sorts. The word shaman actually, I think, originated in Korea, of all places. And now, commonly, you would hear people talking about the American Indians and the shamans, the healers, and the da-da-da-da-da. You got to separate that from the misconception of magic and things of that nature. Healing is not magic. It's a natural something that happens. Having knowledge and insight into something and being able to let something happen in a certain way might just mean that you know something. It doesn't mean that you can wave your hand and something moves, you know, in that way. It's just maybe most people don't understand how the process actually works. Shamanism, in its literal definition, is defined as one who knows, right? And usually shamans are healers, like myself. So, I mean, that's what I do. That's one of the things I do. Sometimes it's on a big level, sometimes it's on a lower level, but never confuse, I don't have any power, so I don't do the healing. I'm the medium. You know, I'm the person who might get the thing going, get it rolling, da-da-da-da-da, or direct it. You know, and again, if the creator or the energy or whatever says, no, this is the way it's supposed to be, you leave it alone. You know, that's just like people getting sick. I don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. And then, oh, come heal me. You know, so every time they get sick, they go to get healed. And they're like, I'll never die now because they got to be somebody to heal. Sometimes it just might be your time. You know, so in terms of getting to the understanding of what can be done and what can't be done, you also have to understand that. But I personally don't have any power, just so people really understand that.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a little bit about shamanism.
Okay. And then you, and as we talk about these different aspects of you as a person, it just shows when someone, no matter what their profession is, it's always so many ways in which you can expand and enhance yourself and your relationship with other people and what you're doing. And so I know you also are a teacher. Okay, you're not just a drummer. You're also a teacher. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. Well, currently I'm a part of something called the Communiversity, and it's being revised after the COVID experience and whatever. But the Communiversity started about 40 years ago. And I was one of the students then. Now I'm one of the instructors. So I teach Black philosophy at the Communiversity, Community University. So
who started the Communiversity?
There were people like Dr. Bobby Wright,
okay.
Dr. Anderson Thompson, and some of the people that were there. Brother Blair, he taught metaphysics. Ruachiri, he taught African affairs. I mean, we had a whole lot of different teachers, but it was a matter of people choosing which class they chose to go to. Bobby's class was Dr. Bobby Wright. You just called him Bobby. His class was dealing with Black psychology and the psychological impact that was going on in the community. So that was a beautiful experience back then. And here, 40 years later now, for the last 15 years, I've been one of the instructors. And I teach African philosophy. So that's a whole, or African Black philosophy. So there's a separation. I always like to, be clear about what you're doing when you're doing it, So if it's something from my group of people here in this country, as opposed to somewhere from another part of the world, another part of African people in another part of the world. So this is something that I got into and that I do. In terms of involving and getting involved in philosophy, that was kind of interesting how that kind of started. And to tell the story kind of sounds even stranger. Okay. When I was in school, when I was at the university, I had decided then that I wanted to be a teacher at the junior college, on the junior college level. So I was trying to decide what I might major in, and everybody that I knew was majoring in one of the social sciences. As we were looking for solutions to our concerns and our problems as Black people, we were trying to be Blacker than we were and understanding who we were better. Everybody seemed to go into social sciences. So I decided back then that I would major in philosophy. And this is what I ended up doing. And as a result, it wasn't a matter of learning European philosophy, but it was a matter of it being allowed me to focus on what I'm doing and think about and advance myself in that manner. So regardless of the degrees I got in it, that wasn't the important part of it, me being a philosopher. It had more to do with the fact that I understood us as Black African people, and it understood how we have to find our way getting back to who we are, because Africans in different parts of the world were always philosophers and thinkers. And this is what we always were. So it's getting back to that tradition. And in my going to school for all those years that I did go, I never really got into the European part. I mean, I made jokes about it. I mean, half the time, just as another stupid example.
Okay.
I remember I had a class it was in existentialism. So this white instructor, I was at University of Illinois, and he was all into Descartes. I didn't care about Descartes. So I had to write a paper about Descartes. So just to make joke of the whole thing, I wrote the criticism of the criticizers who criticized Descartes. Mm-hmm. And I was just making a joke about the whole thing.
Now Descartes was a philosopher.
Descartes was a French philosopher. Mm-hmm. And he was the one kind of capsulizing that term, I think, therefore I am. Mm-hmm. So epistemology deals with knowledge of different sorts. So I just thought the whole thing was really silly. And in terms of the way they taught it in the university, they were not really teaching people to think. They were merely teaching people to study what they call the great philosophers.
Regurgitating.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So the white guy, he really tripped. He was tripping. Most of the time when I was in school, I just kind of aced the philosophy stuff. Mm-hmm. But this particular time, I had to write this paper, and he has me in his office, and he's reading it. And I'm like, okay, there's a misspelled, no, you didn't put a period here. And I'm like, so you got to remember, this was back when they didn't have the computers with the spell check and the correcting your English. You had to write and type that.
Back in what year? The
70s.
The 70s, okay.
Yeah. So you didn't have all that stuff. Mm-hmm. You wanted somebody to type your paper, you had to find somebody who knew how to type, to find a typewriter, to type it, and da-da-da-da-da. And everything had to be a certain way. So the guy, just to make funny of the little joke of the whole thing, mm-hmm. he was like, you're a philosophy major. I can only give you a C with this paper. Look at this. You missed this is not right. The grammar and da-da-da-da-da. And I remember sitting in his office, and he literally like, well, if you rewrite it. So as I said, I don't want to rewrite it. Just give me a C. Mm-hmm. So he was so upset about it. Mm-hmm. And then he wanted to keep my paper. And I'm like, I made a joke of this whole thing. Well, I have this discussion ongoing with the people in Berkeley and the da-da-da-da-da and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, no, give me a C and give me my paper. Because quite often instructors will keep papers
write books for the university
from their stuff that they got from the students.
Absolutely.
So I think the people there didn't like me very much, especially after that. Mm-hmm. But I didn't really participate with them anyway, so it wasn't a big thing. Yeah, but that was just an example. Okay. But writing even the books, my last book, it's called Black Philosophy, mm-hmm. Part 2. Mm-hmm. So the first book that I wrote was called African Nationalism of Philosophy. And I was going to use it as part of a dissertation. And I realized I'm not giving it to these people. Mm-hmm. And I decided not to. So that was like my first book, which I decided at that time not to get published.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's a little bit about the philosophy. Mm-hmm. Over the years, I have taught junior college, high school, whatever, but that's not a usual thing. Mm-hmm. I've done so many things in my short time here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Things you don't even know about.
I know.
Yeah.
Now, you authored how many books?
6.
6 books.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm writing one now.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is really finished. I just gotta tweak it.
So what is the message you want to get out with your writings?
Each book has a different message. Mm-hmm. So I mean, the first one was more of a philosophical book. I had the only visiting black instructor, and I did it as an independent study. So he read it and gave me my A. But the whole thing was, it was really defining what was going on for us as black people during that time. Mm-hmm. And then the other books I've written had different messages of different sort. So I think like my second book was Ngoma Ku Sema, which means talking drums. And that was a little bit more about me, my relationship with Afrikan drumming. And it really talks about all the different aspects of even being a master drummer, what it means, lead drummer, how the spirit works, what is possession, how that operates, da-da-da-da. Mm-hmm. It was about that. Then I've written, I think I wrote a book about poems, short stories, and Proverbs. I wrote a book like that.
Mm-hmm.
So then the next one was called My Drums Play for You, My People. No, I did another one in between that. Another one was dealing with an exhibit that I had. So it was a drum house exhibit. So the one time that I did go to Africa, I visited Echo's family. I mentioned him before.
Yes, you did.
I visited Echo's family, and they were teasing me so much about, oh, you're a drummer, so-and-so, so-and-so. So they brought me to the village, his village. I was at his village, and the guy was showing me all the different drums that they had. The chief was showing me the drums, and the drummer there was showing me the drums. And I realized then that this is where the drums live. That's not where they're stored. So the drums actually have energy and it lives. So that's how I came up with the idea of having a drum house. And this is where my drums live right now. And that's kind of the way that happened. There are so many stories about that drumming African stuff, you know. I don't know where else you want to go with that.
Okay. Now, I think one other title I heard of you, that you are a griot.
Yeah.
Okay. And from my understanding, in Africa, those are the people who hold the history and the stories of the village, you know.
Right.
People, so.
Well, that concept is more in that concept of griot is more in the Mandinka tradition.
Okay.
And they're the storytellers. And they can tell you the history from the beginning of time to the present. You know, that happens there. Griot, in a more general sense, is a storyteller. And even like as I mentioned, the book that I wrote of telling stories, I'm telling stories. So that book is called Father's Lessons. And literally I have a lot of stories that I wrote. You know, and stories that I've heard, most of them, you know, and then stories I wrote, proverbs that I've heard from people, you know, and I did a collection of that kind of thing. So my being a griot is not so much telling our story about our history, because our history is kind of sordid. Now, I don't mean sordid in that there's something wrong with it, but we have to go way back hundreds of years, well, much longer than that, to actually really start telling our story. And it's not a matter of what happened to us in the past 300 or 400 years. It goes back further than that. So in telling our story, this is what the concept of the griot that I do. Because there's so many misconceptions related to how we view and how Africa really is. Less than 1,000 years ago, they had what they call the Great Migration. So this was a migration that happened. The people in the Sahara area crossed the desert, went down the East Coast, went all the way to South Africa. And these people were generally called Bantu, the Bantu people. They're the same people. So you can talk about the Bantu being everywhere, everybody from the Zulu in Southern Africa, people in Kenya, the Kikuyu, these are all Bantu people. Some of them just stopped at different points in their journey. So a lot of times when you look at Africa and you think about telling the story, and we always imagine Africa's been the same for thousands of years. Some of it is the same, some of it is unchanged, but also it was evolving quite often. And as I understood that and the concept, for us as African people, and we are an African people, to have been together as long as we have been together long enough to acknowledge the fact that we are a people. And this is kind of like the whole point of it. And that was kind of like the focus of the last book not the book that I'm writing, the last book that I wrote. You know, I was dealing with Black philosophy and what that actually means and what it's all connected and what it's about.
Why do you think it's important for us to know this, for us to have this information, or to be aware?
Well, it's just like anything else. My motivation is always to get people to think. Think. It's not something that I don't think. It's not something that needs to be taught and trained and instilled in you. But understanding the concept of you being a people is understanding the concept of being a family. You don't learn to be in a family. You're in a family. Now, whether the family is healthy and positive and
Functional.
doing good things or whatever, that's what you got.
That's right.
But in terms of us understanding that we're Black, it's important to you for you to understand yourself. To be yourself, you got to know who you are. You know, and I don't personally try to convert people to anything. My thing is to live your culture. It's not a matter of you somehow learning and acting like you love drumming, or I love something from Africa. We got Black stuff right here.
That's right.
Gospel,
That's right.
jazz, blues, hip hop. I mean, you know,
That's right.
we got our
That's right.
culture, which is another expression of that.
That's right.
And in actuality, practicing and living your culture is appreciating all of it. You know, but also not forgetting where we came, because we didn't get started right here 300 years ago. We go further back. This is what I get quite often when I'm playing the drums from the brothers from the continent. And they just amuse me to no end, because they always first they like to say, you're not really African. So then I play, you studied in Africa, right? No. Oh, but you're a professional. No. But we play something like that right back home. I said, that's nice. And generally they appreciate it because it's dealing with the same energy. And as much as we always kind of like to feel like, well, you know, we're not real Africans. We're just Africans. You know, we're not really. No, we are. So the biggest difference between us and other groups of people on the continent and different parts of the country or the world, we were made up from so many different groups of Africans.
Yes.
And we have this uniqueness about us that it was merged. People don't think about that so much. Oh, that brother's light skinned. Oh yeah, some white people in his family. The Sand people, some of them my complexion, never been integrated with nobody. Some of the Ethiopians, I mean, you know, it's just a matter of we have so much mixed up in us, and it comes out on different levels. You know, yes, Africa is the land of the Blacks. That's a fact. But there's so many shades of who we are, and we got to acknowledge that. Knowing who you are makes you proud of who you are, should make you proud of who you are, and make you want to actually be more than you are and do something for your people. And that's what it really comes down to. My thing is to get people to think.
And I think that's why what you do is so important. I think we have so much to fight against all the time, you know, to push back against. I remember this movie, Imitation of Life, with a young lady in there. I never got the sense that she hated Black people. She loved her mother. I think she loved her mother dearly.
Right.
But it was the way that Black people were being treated that she was running from. You know, that's what she was running from. You know, she wasn't being treated the way she was. I think she could have embraced herself better.
Good thing. Hollywood movie though.
Yeah, Hollywood movie, but in reality was for a lot of people, like a lot of people.
But this is why I embrace people to live your culture, experience this stuff. And over the years, I've played in every kind of church you could imagine. And I get resistance sometimes in the beginning. And then all of a sudden it just like, you know, I remember playing, and this was a strange experience. I was supposed to play for a wedding, and it was in a Baptist church. And I'm like, play for 100 Baptist church weddings. Okay, so in Inglewood, in a Baptist church, with an Indian preacher.
Mm.
And I'm like, whoa, this is different.
Yes.
So this was just funny. So the guy, they wanted me to come and actually play a little bit. And he's like, well, why can't you play these trap drums, the drums that we have here? This Indian guy saying this. And I said, that's not the drums that I prefer to play. I mean, I can play them, but that's not what I'm doing. Da 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 da. He was like, no, we can't have all that heathenism and da 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 coming in our church and da 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 da. And he was like, I'm adamantly opposed to it. So then when I played at the wedding itself, I did play for the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't get him to leave me alone. He was not only, come, sit next to my wife. He was darker than me. But him and his wife, all of them, sit next to me. You need to come and play at the church sometime. Mm-hmm. So-and-so, so. But I always get this, after they see what it actually is,
Mm-hmm.
it flip-flops.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm promoting positive energy,
Mm-hmm.
and this is just something for us as a people.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
Another little
Very,
story.
very important.
Yep.
Very important.
Uh-huh.
So for other people, or especially our young people out here that are inspiring artists, you know, especially in drummers or any kind of music for that matter, you know, what kind of advice, you know, or words of wisdom would you have for them?
Okay. More than anything, I would tell them to live their art.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it half-step.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and allow yourself to actually move to the next level. My experience is not going to be your experience. I'm kind of very unique with the whole thing. I don't take credit for anything that I do. This was something that was just kind of given to me. I got all these drums in here. I couldn't even tell you what year I carved them. I mean, not only do I not
Mm-hmm.
keep up with it, and quite often when I'm carving so fast that I'll make them and I'll create them and da-da-da. Then I finish them and I bring them, put them up in the room. Now, occasionally I do bring them out.
Mm-hmm.
But for younger people, especially any artist, live your art.
Sure.
And then push the limit of it. Push the limit of it. Express yourself in it.
Mm-hmm.
And try not to just be imitating somebody else. That's what I would tell them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Uh-huh.
Well, I cannot end this interview without you playing for us
Okay.
a message to our people, you know.
Okay. I'm not going to do a deep message. I think I'm going to play what I call my signature piece.
Okay.
And the rhythm is actually called Vita, which means war.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting, again, not knowing a lot of the origins of the stuff. A guy told me after I was doing it for many, many, many years, oh, you play polyrhythms. And I'm like, what's a polyrhythm?
Mm-hmm.
He said, what you doing?
Mm-hmm.
So polyrhythm is that's basically what it is. So this is one style of drumming that I play. And I'm going to play this rhythm called Vita. So it has many changes in it. It has many rhythms that are talking to each other, and different things are going on in it. Vita.
Oh my
Usually
goodness.
I play that on 7 drums.
Oh my goodness. How many drums were you playing there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Wow.
Yep.
That was awesome. That was awesome. I
Thank
could
you.
feel it. I could feel it.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Well, I like what I was feeling.
Hey.
Anyway, there you go.
Okay.
Wow. So, if someone wanted to make contact with you, you know, to use your services as a drummer, how would they best contact you?
Okay. Using my name, if you Google my name,
Mm-hmm.
buku information, places I performed.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to see me actually doing some other drumming.
Okay.
Quite often I travel performing, like in the islands and da-da-da-da-da. But hopefully you put the information out.
Absolutely.
Because I don't have something like, here's the, read the
Okay.
card.
Okay.
You know. But I'm available.
Sure.
And again, I don't usually tell people this, but I just mention it. As a master drummer, I don't charge for weddings, funerals, naming ceremonies, community rituals of any sort.
Okay.
So this is just something I don't do. Because what I do is for our people and not something that, you don't pay me, I'm not going to do it. You know, it's not about that. Now, I don't refuse money, but I don't charge. So you can spread that however you like.
Okay. And we will definitely do that. This has been a wonderful interview.
Okay.
It's been very inspiring, thought-provoking, made me think about a lot of things.
Okay.
And just again, another family, another one of our wonderful people in our community. You know, we have a wonderful community, and we've got a lot of people out here that we don't know about. And I'm sure many people have seen you because you've been at so many events.
Yeah.
And but you're a very special person. You're very
Thank
special
you.
to our community.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you
Thank you.
and the work that you are doing.
Okay.
And as you continue to do what you're doing, you're growing, you're learning more, you're imparting more, and that's what it's supposed to be about.
Okay, so just as I mentioned, on the 4th Sunday in July, we're having what's called a drum fest.
Okay.
And this is the 13th year. That's something that I do in addition to the African Festival of the Arts and the other events, doing Kwanzaa and Black History Month and the traditional stuff. So there we do the healing drums. The UNIA, Garvey's original organization, have partnered with me to do this drum fest. And we do it every year.
Okay.
Everything is free.
Wow.
Everything is free. The food, the entertainment, everything is free.
Wow.
So look for that coming up.
All right. A real family affair.
Yes.
Real family affair. Well, thank you so much. And friends and family, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. This was a wonderful conversation with Brother Baba Tyehimba Mtu.
Yeah.
Absolutely. A master drummer and a master carver in our community. We ask that you go to our website at rrgbc.org and where you can support our cause. You can watch this podcast and all of our other podcasts, which are archived on our website. We also ask that you go to Save Black Bookstores in Chicago at change.org because we want our bookstores to get contracts from our libraries, our local libraries, and our local schools. And we will be announcing our book giveaway at our next podcast. You know, we give a book away every month. So I want to thank you so much for coming and have a good night.